Hey, everybody. We're back. William W.J.R. Parks was my co-author, Janelle Coberly. Hopefully to introduce another author for you guys that y'all might be interested in her world, and also maybe gain some tips for any brand new writers out there. Katie Salidas.
You got it.
All right. I always butcher everybody's name, so I want to make sure I can get that correct. But yeah, and you're a best-selling author at that, and she has quite a few books out there, actually, which me and Janelle were commenting on just a little while ago. So there we go. That's quite a collection of books. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Katie.
All right. Well, I've been publishing since about 2010. And like I was saying right beforehand, the first book that I wrote actually took me about 5 years to write, to learn the craft and go through all the process of figuring out how to actually make a book a book. And that's including self-publishing too. And since then, I've been on average between 3 and 4 books a year I put out.
Wow.
I run the self-publishing and author podcast, Spilling Ink. I also run my own publishing consultant service where I help authors with their needs to get their book published. So whether they're looking for cover art or editing or manuscript critiquing or formatting, or just somebody to show them how to go through the steps once they've got their book to get it out there to the world. I work with a lot of different clients at their level, so it's a la carte.
That's good. Great. Yeah, because I know that's a lot of stuff we were missing back about a few, like 10 to 15 years ago. We didn't have any of that. I know me and Janelle had to learn everything ourselves as far as
there's a lot
we
to
were
learn.
Talking about that too, buying every book out there or going to the library because the internet was barely starting to have a breakthrough in the whole idea of indie publishing and whatnot. Because I think because I started writing, when I was 15, trying to get my book out there, and I didn't have a clue. Back then, it was more traditional than anything else, of course, before the self-publishing market and stuff. So, and we were talking about your book that you actually have out right now. What is it? Write the Damn Book, or?
Yes, my latest that was just published in December 2020. My handy dandy how-to guide for authors of all levels. It's not just for beginner authors. It's authors of all levels can take something out of this. It talks about the creative issues. It talks advice on how to get through things like writer's block. I touch on plot, story structure, the elements that make a character feel real. There's tables and charts in here for word swaps if you're trying to find that better word and you just can't think of it, or to describe body language accurately. So there's a lot of information here, including how to self-edit, not before publishing, but before sending it off to an editor, because if you self-edit beforehand, that makes your editor's job a lot easier and can cost you less when it comes to you're paying for the editing before publishing.
Yeah. And you talk about body language. I know that was one of my main issues back in the day was body language, or at least I have to have the person doing something all the time besides like just sitting there. My other issue was facial expressions. Do you go into anything with facial expressions by any chance in the book?
I do break down the face a little bit. I break down how the eyes are looking, how the mouth, just simple cues can mean a lot of things. Just for instance, somebody who's nervous might, constantly run their fingers through their hair, or they might twiddle their thumbs, or they might bite their lip, or they might not look at you. Or if they're telling a story and they look up to the sky, maybe they're not actually being truthful with you. And those little clues help make your writing feel a little bit more genuine, because you're showing versus telling, somebody sounds nervous, but you're showing that little, twitch or that avoiding eye contact that makes it feel, this person's not telling the truth.
No, that was what we had discussed last video too, about showing, not telling. Going into the idiosyncrasies, I guess, of certain people and characteristics and stuff. It's a good way in order to actually kind of call out all the, I guess, plethora of almost like a portfolio of what this character is, so you can make them 3D, all the different traits. So yeah, that's what I love about books. It's, I was talking about, like reading through Stephen King, there was more. I don't know. I tried to say this. There was more fat in the book than there was, practicality, and that's what I like to go for more, into the practicality of things. Like, actually tell me what we need to do and show me like how to actually do it, or give me the examples or ideas. There's a lot of books out there that just don't do that, and I don't know.
Katie, just right off the top of your head, could you give our viewers an example of the difference between showing and telling? Maybe a little short sentence or something that would kind of demonstrate the difference.
Yeah, and I actually have one of these examples in the book. So instead of telling that somebody is tall, okay, George is tall. How about George stumbles into the room and knocks his head on the door frame, and then complains, "Oh my God, was this house built for hobbits? I didn't tell you he was tall there. You got the idea just from seeing the action happen."
So do you believe that showing is more in demonstrated better in action? Is that the best way, do you think, is to get it across, is to put it showing into action of the character? Like you were saying, he ducked when he went underneath the door or through the doorway or whatever, something to that effect, that showing your character in action.
I think there needs to be a balance between showing and telling, because if you were to show every single detail, including the mundane details, you slow the pacing of your story. So you need to be judicious on where you want to actually show things versus where you want to kind of skim over and get to the more important things. And when you're trying to skim over something to get to the more important stuff, then you can do a little, active narration, active telling. But don't overdo it. It's got to be a balance.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And that what ends up being the pacing of the story, in a sense, compared to how much you have for showing and telling, and certain techniques like dialogue as well, where you can actually speed along if a story starts to drag in certain spots. I know that a lot of people used to tell me, if it starts dragging, you can add dialogue in order to add the interest to it.
The characters interacting is really, that's the most important thing, because the characters are the heart of the story. The setting that they play in and the conflict that's happening to them are very important, but it's the characters, their reactions, their motivations, what's going on inside of them that really pushes that story forward. And so through dialogue, yes, you can absolutely make the scene more real, more touching for a reader, because they can really understand what's going on between these characters.
And I was looking through all the novels that you have. How many series do you have?
I think I'm up to 6 now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm still technically working on the Asset series. I don't have book 5 out yet. I actually got that horrible writer's block with book 5 that I talk about trying to overcome. And one of my tips for overcoming writer's block is to find something else to work on to kind of clear your head, like a palate cleanser. And so I'm doing a lot of work for my business right now instead of writing, which is kind of taking me away a little bit. And so that way, when I look at the story again, I'll have fresh eyes and I can maybe see what I'm missing, because I don't like the story as I wrote it. And if I don't like it, I'm not going to release it, because my readers aren't going to like it.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like, I can see how that works. Yeah. There's certain stuff, if I go back to the story, I've changed an entire freaking half of a book before, just because I didn't like the direction it had gone. And I was like, no, this is not the way that I felt that it was needing to go. And then, it was actually West Texas Blood is one of my thickest books, and half of it I ended up completely changing it at the midpoint. It completely became a different story.
Sometimes it needs it. Now, are you a pantser or a plotter or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think I'm a pantser for sure. I know me and Janelle right now, we're it's kind of hard for me, because I actually am using the what's it called, the is it 25 or 27 act structure? Anyway, what's the structure of that one? It's a famous one. I think that
Save the Cat.
No, not that one. It's I know that one, but Let me see.
That's everyone's favorite.
I was trying to figure out the name of it. There's a particular name, and a lot of people actually suggested. One of my friends, Tori, she actually suggested to me a while back. And she actually suggested Save the Cat. But no, it kind of outlines what every chapter should be, in a sense, like what's happening in this chapter, and then it gives an example, and it goes through that first act. And then Act 3, you have another section of chapters, and it tells you what's going on in each one until you get to Act 3, of course, where the climax is building up and like the reversal, surprise, and whatnot. But I used that one in order to actually do an outline. I mean, I'm a pantser. I gotta just write by the seat of my pants and see where the characters take me.
Mhm.
But that's what me and Janelle were actually. I think who was it that was Bobby? I think maybe where we were trying to say, well, how do you co-author? That's one thing I don't really see out there a lot of advice on is co-authoring.
Hard.
And
That is hard.
so yeah, so when the way that me and Janelle decided to do it right now, we've co-authored, a short story, and of course Leonette. But she kind of took the reins on Leonette on that one, and just came to me for advice because we're still in my world, so I have to kind of put in the overall rules of the world as long as we don't break them, because then kind of readers will be like, well, then if that can happen, anybody can get away with stuff. But
Yep.
the way we're doing it right now, like I said, we're more plotting using that template. I haven't written a lot lately because I just got done moving. She's been taking the reins a little bit, but I think she said I'm going to probably have to take over for this next little section she just finished writing. And what I have is I wrote the plot for the entire story first, and then I used the breakdown of the chapters and put in like a paragraph or two of what's happening in each chapter according to the example this template told me. So that way we're both on the same page.
Mhm.
And what we do is she's more into Leonette's POV. I'm into the Lobo brothers POV. So mainly taking on Santiago. So when we're writing a chapter, either I'll go ahead and write the next chapter, and then anything that has to do with Leonette, she'll jump in there and correct anything to how she perceives would be Leonette's responses or reactions to what the Lobo brothers do, and vice versa. If she's writing one of the chapters, I won't mess with Leonette as much, but then I'll mess more with Santiago or Domingo to see how they would actually react to her, whatever she does or says and whatnot.
Yeah.
Then the POV of Santiago. So
It works.
This is like a good partnership.
Yeah, it works well that way because he in his head he has the Lobo brothers. In my head, I have Leonette, and they are our three main characters. So it works pretty well actually when we do that.
Yeah, you write with more authenticity when you've got that character that you're more focused on.
Right.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the actual. I don't know. I like it because then you can actually see the breakthrough. Or not the breakthrough, but the individuality of the character. But when you're jumping into different minds and stuff. But as far as have you co-authored?
Yes, in fact, my last series was co-authored, and I'm in talks, knock on wood, with possibly doing another one with her. My co-host with Spilling Ink, J.E. Taylor, she and I have been friends since the beginning. We both beta read for each other for years. We both know each other's style. We go to each other as sounding boards. So we decided to give it a shot, and we wrote a 3-part series, the Running from the Devil series. And we had a good time with it. We balanced each other out really well. If I would get stuck somewhere, she seemed to be able to bridge the gap between the areas I would get stuck on, and the same goes for her. If she was getting stuck somewhere, I seemed to be able to bridge the gap for her.
Yeah.
And we wrote the 3 books in about 6 months.
Wow.
And it was fast. We did really well with it. And so we're considering possibly doing another trilogy in the near future.
How many words were in each book? Word count?
Roughly, I want to say 65,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really
I think maybe Will and I might be able to shoot one out within a couple of months too. This one we're working on, but there's been so many different things that have stopped us. Like he's moved, and I'm in the process of doing several different things. that are, anyway, it's it's
And is
slowing
that series?
down what I'm trying to say.
Is that
Life
series
gets in the
on your
way
website?
sometimes.
It was. Oh, there it is. Running from the Devil. I was trying to look up the books. And who is it that does your actual, like, your book covers?
That's a variety of people.
Okay.
I've changed up covers over the years too from their originals. The Immortalis series was done by Wilson Rowe. He also did the first 2 books in the Old Town Pack series. And then Covers by Christian did the first 3 covers for my Chronicles of the Uprising series. And We Got You Covered did the 3 books in the Little Werewolf series, as well as my Agents of Asset series.
Huh. Yeah. That's pretty nice. Yeah, because that's another thing that I try to emphasize on new writers is once they get past the point. I mean, by the time they're done with their book, of course, it's another phase of the whole process there. And I keep telling them, you absolutely have to make sure your cover is not done by you, because a lot of authors I see a lot of times is they actually try to get. I mean, you're supposed to, of course, make sure that it fits within your genre,
Right.
But what a lot of authors try to do is they actually try to take certain aspects when they're trying to design their own cover. They try to take aspects from the actual story and try to fit it all within the cover, and it's like, no, you're a writer, you're an author. That's what your main profession or your main focus should be. So be the writer and the author. Let somebody who does like graphic design or whatnot be and make sure that they know about books, and in that particular specialty is book cover design. They'll know what genre you're talking about. So let them be the expert to design the book, because they're going to know what brings the people and readers to your book to be seen on the thumbnail or whatnot. Because if you get it wrong,
Yep.
your book isn't going to sell. And then the next part, of course, is the copyright, which is the synopsis behind the book. So those are the 2 main things I always tell people. It's like, make sure you at least get those 2 things correct. Once you're done, you have all this hard work, and then you can't sell anything. It's not necessarily because of your story, because before even people get into your story, they have to get back. I mean, unfortunately,
people do. They judge a book by the cover.
Yeah.
and not all cover artists too are good for all genres.
Exactly.
In my own capacity as a publishing consultant, I do work on covers, but I tend to work on nonfiction covers. I usually send people in other directions when it comes to fiction covers, because every genre kind of has its own expectations.
Exactly.
And certain cover artists, like Christian, Covers by Christian, beautiful cinematic style covers, great for sci-fi, great for dystopian, maybe not the best for young adult.
Yeah.
He's got a certain style that speaks to a certain genre, and what he does is just fabulous. But I look at him as more, sci-fi, more urban, more dystopian, because he's got that covers that seem to match that design. When I go to We Got You Covered, they cover a lot of young adult covers. So my Little Werewolf series was perfect for them. So I tend to go towards designers that work within a genre too, because they're going to know that target a little bit better than just a general graphic artist.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like I know I've had Ed come to me from the past in the days of Burning Willow Press, because Kendra, I did this was one of the hardest covers I did, was Kendra's cover, because it was horror erotic, and I was like, how am I going to mix that together? I didn't have
mix very well, do they?
I was like, I don't really have very much experience in that, but I'll give it a try. And so I had to do a lot of research, and I tried to look at all the other covers, but there was nothing that I could go off of. I mean, because every genre has a specific cover, and it tells the people that they're in the correct genre. So my main concern is, well, I don't know how I'm going to get the correct genre in this, because it's mixing 2 different ideas together. And I know there's already stories out there. So what I did is just try to bring the colors out as much as possible in order to at least gain the attention. But yeah, and then from there, of course, poetry was something that I'm completely not familiar with. So, but Ed liked the idea for that cover, and it's, for me, it's not something that is probably something that I would glance over, but that's exactly what you just got at, because I don't have experience for doing poetry covers. Of course, I'm going to help out whichever way I can, so I'm going to try to do my best for him. But at the same time, I'm not experienced in that. My cover experience falls under, and of course, these have more of my preference since they're more self-published. I like to do more of the dark fantasy, urban fantasy stuff, and I will be honest, I don't really think that this one kind of almost falls more toward the young adult idea of the way that it's designed, which is really not young adult. Not my two Raven books are not young adult. So the other ones could probably fall under there, but but as far as like you said, the person has to know the genre they're designing for. There isn't specific. A lot of people say, no, do it differently so it pops out. It's not. No, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're leading people to the correct genre. If you put something that makes them get confused and then they start reading the book and then it just kind of goes haywire after that.
Yeah, I live and learn, and that's part of the way I write too. And when I write my self-help books, like the Write the Damn Book and Go Publish Yourself, I admit to my own failures, and that's how I've learned. I redid the covers for the Immortalis series 3 times in the 10 years it's been out. The first time it was okay, and it was okay for the time that it came out, but it looked very dated a few years down the road. And so I thought, I really need to go back and I really need to redesign this. And I went to a graphic artist who's a wonderful graphic artist. And they came up with a design that I personally liked. Again, I'm the author, a little biased. And I paid for it, got all the books. There's 4 books in that main series, got those redone. I released them, sales dropped.
Ooh.
They were not hitting the target market at all.
Wow.
So I had to go back and redo them. So I went to a buddy of mine, Wilson Rowe, who still does covers, and he does wonderful covers to this day. So I'm usually recommending him as part of my list of people that I trust. And I was like, help, we need to fix this. What can I do? And so he helped me redesign the covers to what you see now, which definitely speaks to that more urban fantasy, paranormal romance set. A lot more than any of the previous renditions did. And that cost me money. That cost me a lot of money because I've had to pay for 2 full cover redos. And each cover, on average, you're going to spend between $100 and $200, depending on the artist you're looking at. That adds up quick. So I've made the mistakes of going with the author perspective and saying, but I love this versus genre expectation.
Yeah, and that's what like one of the main things I always went off with authors is like, what you're doing, and I know you want your cover, but really, what would you rather have your cover to be like that you want to pick out and think it's going to be best for your story, or just your story? Like most authors are more concerned of their story to try to get it out, and that's why they should concentrate on the story and let somebody who's professional in the idea of the graphic. Your story, how to write, you know the ins and outs. Graphic people, you need to find somebody who knows their in and outs. And
now, that's not to say that you can't give suggestions.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can't explain the feel of the story to your artist and give them an idea of what to go for. But really, yeah, you've got to learn to trust an artist as an artist, too.
Yeah. And you said you did redesign, like with Raven, I think I've redesigned it like this past year, since there was nothing much to do for me. I designed that cover another 4 times, and mainly I was more tweaking it. So I actually kind of changed the background, changed a little bit of, and this is not actually the end outcome. The feathers are black, and I think this is more darkened up in the top. And because I actually went in there and I actually did a and B test So I would put an old cover and the new cover, and I would try to see what's getting more hits on Amazon when I used to do the ads. And
Nice.
the last one actually ended up getting more hits. So I decided, okay, I'll stick with that one.
Okay.
And then of course I actually went with Brian Cohen, and I actually paid the $300 in order to see how it would do, in order to actually get a professional copy editor to actually write me a synopsis. I was wanting to go with Brian Meeks, but I think with him you have to actually contact him on Facebook, and I tried a couple of times and couldn't get a hold of him. But Brian Cohen is one of the top high-end synopsis writers. He does that for quite a few named USA and New York Times bestseller authors out there.
He's got a good system. He's got a good system to how he crafts them.
Yeah. So, and the reason I wanted to do that is because I know I'm trying to study from his books how to do it myself, but I just wanted to see what was different, because I tried Brian Meeks and Brian Cohen's ideas to write Raven's copy edit and synopsis there. And so I kind of put them together to see, okay, how did they do it differently? So at least I could have something to base off my copy edit, because I can see and they can teach me the whole process, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't have anything to go off on for my particular story. So how would they do it any different? So it gives me a learning experience too. So I was happy to pay for that. But at the same time, what I tell people is, like, if you're going to get into writing, do you want to do it as a hobby, or do you want to do it as an actual business that you think you want to at least want to make money off of? And I tell them, well, if it's going to be a business, you got to treat it like a business. You can't treat it like, like something that you are just going to be doing in the background and not do all your, you got to spend money to get it correct and the best possible version of your stories. So
I have a couple, it's a little bit different subject, but I do have a couple of questions for Katie, for brand new writers watching this. How do writers determine, based on their total words written, how do they determine if it's a short story, if it's a novella, if it's a novel, if it's a epic, so on like that? How many words are in each category, so they can learn how to determine what it is exactly? And well, anyway, can you answer that one?
Yeah, there's actually some lists out there that kind of define those terms for us. So anything that's under 20,000 is going to be considered more of a short story. Anything that's between 20 and 40,000 is a novella, and anything that's 40,000 and up becomes novel territory, with anything over 100 to 120,000 being epic. And most genre fiction fits between 60 and 90,000 words. That's the kind of sweet spot for genre fiction.
Okay. And then my second question is, how does a brand new writer determine what genre their book is?
Well, first of all, what's the theme of the story? What's the main goal of the story? That usually helps you determine where the genre is. And then as you're writing it, you look at the different elements that are happening. If romance is the primary theme of your story, then your story is going to be in that romantic category. But if it's dealing with paranormal creatures, you're in the paranormal romance category. If you're dealing with a mystery over a death, like a murder mystery, you're going to be in your mysteries and thrillers. That's where your category is. So find what the main theme is, and then look at your elements that are surrounding that theme to help you narrow down your genre.
Mm-hmm. And are those subjects in the writing books that you've written?
I don't actually touch on specific genres. I kind of keep it neutral to all genres. So it's more writing advice to get you to write your book, whichever book that is. And I do give some examples of how things might look in different genres, but I don't specifically target one over the other.
Okay. And you have your writing books there. Can you hold them up and show us the front of them?
And this cover will be changing for the yellow one. I haven't updated it since 2018. It was originally written in 2012, so you can tell things change over time, and the publishing industry has made huge leaps and bounds since I started. And even in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of changes too. So I need to update this book now to reflect what is current within the publishing industry as far as the indies go, how you go about publishing your book, and what sources you want to use, what aggregators you might want to contract with, audiobooks being a huge thing right now, especially with Audiblegate. I don't know if you guys know about that.
Yeah, I watched your video on it and stuff like that. So
there's a lot more
I was actually gonna go through them, but now with all this stuff happening, I ain't going with them never anymore. But I was very hesitant to go into audio in the first place, just because it's extremely expensive, or you have to get into a deal with the narrator, and so I wasn't really sure. I don't know the specifics of it. I only kind of touched on it, and the only reason I ever even thought about it is because back when Burning Willow Press was around with Ed and Kendra, they had suggested that I put my book into it, and so I read up a little on it, but then I wasn't really interested into the audio stuff. But a lot of people tell me that it's a huge market out there that are really, and if you have a contract with the narrator, I'm not really sure how it works. I guess you actually can have them also push it out for you as well at the same time, because both of y'all be marketing it. So it gives you another venue or another pathway to market. But then I actually found out about the situation through you, and I said, oh well, hell no, I ain't gonna do that. That's quite a ripoff. I mean, everybody's getting a bad in, and all these this big companies getting all the money while everybody else is getting ripped off. So I was like, no, never mind. And now I'm like, well, if I do want to go into that path and go through audio, since I don't want to lose out in the market, I don't know where to go actually. So
my suggestion for now is to look at Findaway Voices. But if you do utilize them as your aggregator, which sends your book out to all the other channels, to maybe hold off on using the Audible channel, because Findaway Voices also has to use the same contract you would use to get their books through Audible. So right now, anything dealing with Amazon's Audible system, I would just say hold off on. But that doesn't mean you can't do an audiobook. There are other options out there, and the group on Facebook, the Fair Deal for Narrators and Rights Holders, or you go to facebook.com/audiblegate. I think that's what it is. Yeah, Audiblegate. It's the same group that runs both of those pages, and they are constantly updating with information on what you can do, what's going on with potential litigation. So it's a good thing to follow up on and to stay informed with, because Amazon knows that they've done wrong, and it's a matter of making them do right now.
Yeah.
So they're pushing really hard for it. And eventually, maybe Audible will be a redeemed platform. We don't know. But for the moment, they're very, very sketchy.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I have another question for you, Katie. What if a writer wants a book published in Braille?
Now, that's one I've never heard before. And I'm not sure any of the traditional indie printing platforms have Braille as an option.
I didn't know if it was or not. I just wondered, if someone did want their book published that way, how would they go about it?
That would be specialty printing for sure, but I don't know. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never actually thought about that either.
I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's because it's a specialty type of printing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go through some unique channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
they'll publish a book in Braille or not. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I think pretty much anything we found lately is possible. You just have to find the right source.
Yeah.
I was going to swing back around into the genre category. I was going to see. I always figured that dark fantasy was kind of the umbrella that everything else kind of falls, as far as like urban fantasy, paranormal, and I don't know what else falls under there. You have a supernatural, right? Supernatural. Would you say that is correct kind of idea to go with?
When you say paranormal these days, most people have a specific idea when you say paranormal. If it's paranormal romance. Whereas if you say supernatural, most people are thinking of the supernatural creatures. So my choice in saying that I'm a supernatural and urban fantasy author is more to deflect away from the romance, because I write very little romance.
Yeah.
More in the gritty, darker urban fantasy realm, but there is some of the romantic elements. But almost everything I write involves supernatural creatures.
And I was going to say, because the reason I ask is because that I know that my books and my world is dark fantasy, but I still have the specifics of pinpointing where my books fall. It's like I never know. But because I know me and Janelle are writing about Leonette. She's a half angel, and the Lobo brothers are the half vampires, the Dampiers. And she is like a private eye, so she fixes, or she works for mortals, and comes across paranormal stuff that I call it the hidden world that humans don't know about. So trying to put that out, in this one we're kind of playing around with romance because she never has had a romantic encounter. So I was wondering, well, maybe would that fall under the idea of paranormal romance, or would that fall under supernatural just in general, or just dark fantasy?
How big of an element is the romance playing?
Right now it's not very much, but we don't know yet because we just barely got into the second act, and now I think Janelle had actually put her POV where she's kind of interested in Santiago now, and we were thinking about playing around with it.
I would say wait till the end.
Yeah.
Find out how much that romance actually plays into the main theme of the story. Because a lot of times, yeah, you can have romantic elements as side plots, but your main plot is still in that dark, that gritty, the urban fantasy realm. Some people go even darker into like grimdark territory. And that doesn't mean you can't have romance between characters. It just means that's not the focus of the story.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be real heavy, but I was going to kind of string it out like you were saying until we got to the end, toward the end of the book, before I put any actual like a liaison or anything like that between the two characters.
Unless I shove Domingo in there and he really starts pushing for it.
Domingo.
So yeah, wait till you get to the end. See how much it actually plays.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other question I have that kind of almost concerns about genre is, again, something that I myself have problems with is, and I've gone to my friends that work at Barnes and Nobles and also try to talk to them about it, because I had brought it up with the cover. And I'd ask you about this right here. If you were just glancing around and you saw that cover without me telling you what any of this is, where do you think that would fall under as far as the genre and for type of reader, like young adult, or whatnot?
Yeah, young adult urban fantasy is what I see.
Okay.
You have the young woman's face staring straight at you with a defiant pose. That gives me the young adult feel. The bright, bold colors, and then the background is kind of spooky, so I'm thinking paranormal because of the background. But usually on young adults, they tend to focus a lot more on the face. Whereas I've noticed a lot more urban fantasies tend to almost even cut her off at her nose or have them in some kind of a full-bodied defensive position.
Yeah. And that was like my main concern too, just because with this cover, would you say about the same thing?
Yeah, and that looks like your branding is the same, so that would be in the same series. Just by look, that's what I see.
How would a new writer determine the difference between a young adult novel and just the standard adult themed?
Most young adult right now, we like to think of as older teenager. Whereas back when I was a kid, young adult was actually for kids. So now it's like older teenager into college years. Your protagonist, how old are they? If they are in that gray area of 19-20, it might still fall into young adult. If they're over 20 on into 30, then we're looking at the adult range.
Okay.
But young adult focuses a lot more on coming of age, learning about your abilities, and how you deal with that, not being fully an adult vested in the world. And that's why it can go kind of up into the college years, because that's still a time of learning. But after that, once they're in their 20s and they're out of school and they're dealing with the real world, that's more of the adult range for the fiction.
Okay. Good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and that's what she asked the same question I was going to ask, just because that's my big dilemma right now with everything that I write. I know that it's dark fantasy, that I love dark fantasy. I like the supernatural creatures. But as far as a lot of people, there's always been conflicting, I guess, ideas of where they would want me to put it in. And like I said, it's because friends from the book industry. And then, of course, me trying to get it into Barnes & Nobles through one of my other friends. He says, yeah, it wouldn't fall. I mean, the cover would make it fall under young adult, but the story doesn't. because of her age, it makes it fall under young adult. But, of course, again, like the plot and the story doesn't. So, yeah, it kind of left me there.
Gray area.
Yeah, it's a little in the gray area. So that's why I think one of my other ideas that I have is, especially for new writers, always make sure where you really want to be. Because when I wrote this one, it was back in 2009 when I first started writing it, and it wasn't finished till 2011, I think, or 2012. I forgot when it was. But back then, I didn't really pay attention to much as a genre, and so when I wrote her, the story just kind of became what it was, and then it kind of fell where it falls now, and it's somewhere in limbo as far as me trying to figure out where it actually should sit. Because she was actually turned when she was 13 into a vampire, but then it was back in 1776 during the Revolutionary War, and there's more, there's adults around her all the time, but then the curse aged her to about 16. So, but she still falls under the adult genre. But the plot and the story and the theme of it is very greedy, is very adult. I have adult scenes in there because they're vampires, and a lot of times that has to do with a historic period as well, because I shoot a lot of history in there with the Revolution. And so all of that is just bulked up into that one story. All these other ones, I decided, okay, I know where I'm going to put the branching off characters. But with Raven itself has been one of my main headaches, trying to figure out, should I make it young adult? Then I take out a lot of the scenes. I take out a lot of the...
Yeah, I think there's for it to be young adult, I think there are too many sexual scenes in it.
Yeah, for sure. And then the gory stuff, of course, and then more darker sexual scenes, of course. But yeah, it's that's why I said it would. That's what I meant is if I did do it that way, I would have to take all that out, and it would completely change my idea of what Raven is. But I don't know. I know that's more of a complicated term right there for writers and whatnot. So, but I was just trying to get your idea of what you thought where that did fall, just to kind of confirm.
It's a tough sell, because I see where you can be on both sides of it. Although the more I hear you talk about it, it's definitely adult. So how you market it, I think, would have to be towards the adult readers, but you'd also have to kind of make it clear that age is not how you look, almost as part of your sales tactic, so that people aren't surprised when they see a very young physical character who's mentally much, much older and who's dealing with all of the adult themes.
Right.
Yeah.
And she does.
Yeah. And that's why with the cover, it always is. I mean, I've gotten some pretty good reviews back on it, but at the same time, it's just, the cover is what sells, but I want to make sure that people understand that at the same time that it's still falling under a not young adult. Don't
want any bad surprises. We want them to know what they're expecting and to be excited about what they're expecting. That the duality of it can be a selling point.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it, being stuck in a child's body forever. That creates all kinds of interesting problems.
No, it might have to be because I'm doing the third series, and that's what I'm going to finish off with her series. But then every book after that is going to be kind of like a Jack Reacher type idea, where I guess they're not independent as an overall. I forget what the name of that is called, but it's like an overall story for Jack Reacher, or the way that he writes for Lee Child is right there. But because I'll have like West Texas Blood would be the first in the series that eventually just makes isolated novels. They're not like a 3-part series or anything like that. They're kind of standalone, but yet not. And then, of course, all the other characters we have in there. Elspeth, Andrea, and Leonette all kind of be part of the whole entire world there.
Yeah.
Which brings me to another thing. So yours series, are they all independent, or are they all part of an all overall kind of a Marvel DC kind of how they're doing it, the one world thing?
Some are connected, some are not. The Immortalis series, the first 4 books, and then there's a side book, which is Nicholas's story. Those were the originals that I wrote. And then Moonlight, Mated, and Being Alpha, which is the Old Town Pack, is related to that series. That's the wolves. And you're introduced to them in book 3 of the Immortalis series. And then the Little Werewolf are kind of the cousins of the Old Town Pack, but it's the young adult version. So it's kind of a weird branching tree. But those, 3, 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 books, I think, are all connected together in my MCU of sorts.
Yeah. It seems that a lot of people are going toward that nowadays. I didn't see it very much when I first started writing, and then I came up with the idea, we should do this, and I was going to try to call up some writers and see if I could get some more writers, and then I see that a lot of other people are now doing a lot of things with kind of like the whole idea of the one shared universe.
The co-author that I wrote the Running with the Devil series with, which are the 3 on top there, Beneath, Beyond, and Between. Those books actually tie into her world, and she does interconnect every single one of her stories somehow. And she's got as many books as I do. So those 3 do have characters that tie into her stuff.
Okay. So this is all the series.
That's all fiction. Yeah, I don't have any nonfiction in there.
There's the little werewolf one right there.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites. And that was We Got You Covered, who did those 3 covers. And they really nailed that urban fantasy. You can tell you've got the young girl who full face but not full body. And then you've got the spooky background. We've got obviously the wolf and the rising moon in the background. So it's clear targets toward that genre to let you know this is what fits with your expectations.
And that's a lot of writing. So hopefully in a couple of years we plan to have that many.
Lots of words.
If a new writer wanted to write a series, what advice would you give them? Would you say to them, well, think about the whole, say you're going to put 3 in your series or something, or 6, whatever. Would you think about the whole entire story and then divide them up? Or what would your advice be?
Well, that goes back to the whole pantser plotter thing. You've got to determine what style of writing suits you best and what you're good with. And you can be in the middle. You don't have to be a hard pantser or a hard plotter. For the plotters, you definitely want to outline your series, because you need that. You need to understand where your series is going. For the pantsers who are like me, I like to write to-do lists, and I like to have those just general targets of what I want to hit. Right. And then I can kind of divide it up between how many books I want it to be. I like the number 3, so I tend to write things in 3s. So the first 3 books in a series, and then the second 3 books if I'm going to extend the series. So I kind of do my to-do list out for those 3 books ahead of time, but it's not a hard outline. It's just knowing where I want to be by the end of that 3 books and what important details should happen.
So it's more of a directional outline. It just keeps you going in the right direction until you get the things you want to put into those books covered.
Yeah, it's like a road trip across country. I know I'm going to go to New York. I know where there are roads that lead there, and I hope I don't get lost along the way, and I might stop at a few key places in between, but I'll get there eventually.
And just in case, if there are brand new writers who don't know the difference of, I'm sure they'll know what a plotter is, but I actually didn't know that there was a name for what I did for a while until I actually got and started watching Spilling Ink, and y'all said pantsers, and I was like, what the heck is that?
Favorite word.
So if there's a plotter, I guess the opposite would be the pantser. How would you describe a pantser?
Writing by the seat of your pants. It's exactly what it is. You just sit down and go.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. All right.
Now, writing by the seat of your pants is fun, but you will probably have a lot more rewriting to do than the plotter. Because you'll either overwrite or you'll write yourself into a wall and have to backtrack. It's an adventure. You experience the story at the same time your characters do.
Yeah.
Which is really fun.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, because you never know where the characters are going, and sometimes they lead you a whole different path you thought.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that's me as far as pantsing, like being a pantser. I always know, who was I telling this? Bobby, I think. I always know the ending. I always know where I'm going because that's what I imagine first, and then the beginning is a little easy for me. The middle part is where kind of gets a little foggy, but because I know where I want to go all the time for everything that I write, that's my compass of how to get the people back in line, basically to the right path. So they can veer off a little bit if they want to, but eventually the ending might not be where the same location, maybe it's somewhere else, but at least I know how that ending is going to be. And that's why I never actually had too much of a problem as far as not plotting and just going to the seat of my pants and stuff. So
yeah, and if that's your writing style, that works best for you. Part of the reason it took me 5 years to write my first book was because I thought I have to have a hard outline and I have to do this by the book. And let me tell you, it took all the joy out of writing for me. I'm not a plotter. I don't like feeling I have to stick to a hard outline, and that it took the joy out of it. It took my motivation out of it. And it wasn't until I finally said, this ain't working. Scrap the outline. Let me just sit and write. And I started writing in that more pantser style that I was able to finish it and then start the arduous process of figuring out how to publish it. But that's what took me so long. My second book only took 6 months to write. So in comparison, 5 years to 6 months, it was finding my style, what worked for me that helped finish the book.
I guess that is true, yeah, because the first time I wrote it, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I mean, I had written before then, but I had stopped for 7 years. And then I came back and wrote a vampire novel because I started with epic fantasy, writing about Dungeons and Dragon characters that were in my campaigns. So it was a big switch. Let's see. Well, we got a few more minutes left here, but getting down to the final questions, I did want to ask, just because I'm kind of curious. This is however you want to explain it. Is I know it says that you are a bestseller for USA Times Today or USA.
Oh yes, Today. I got my USA Today listing for actually one that's not listed there. I have a pen name, and my pen name writes naughty fiction. So one of those titles did hit 117 on the USA Today bestseller list a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty exciting. And I hope to hit it again with another book, but that was a lot of marketing to get that to happen. That was not purely organic sales. I have to warn indies about that because they sometimes are like, rose-colored glasses. I'm going to publish and I'm going to make millions. No, that was months and months and months of hardcore marketing with a team in order to do that. So I can be proud that yes, it made it there, but the work involved was way more than I could have just done alone. And it's not something I'm ready to start up and do again because it was that hard to get it there. But it is an achievement. So it's nice to be able to say, yep, I've got that.
Yeah, that's a good point too. That's a lot of what a lot of authors, new
And
authors.
that's the difference between having a traditional publisher versus being indie. And not even really just the traditional, because if you're a mid-list author with a traditional publisher, there is no real marketing backing for you. The ones that are constantly hitting that list are usually the biggest names that a publisher's throwing all of their marketing efforts into. And indies, a lot of new ones don't understand how much marketing they just have to do to sell their books. Not
Yeah.
list to sell the books. You
Mhm.
have to constantly be promoting your books. And that doesn't mean go on social media every day and go buy my book, please buy my book, buy my book.
Yeah,
It's investing in getting your ads out there in magazines. It's investing in getting your ads on Amazon and Facebook and BookBub. It's getting interviews. It's getting, it's a lot of media work that you have to do in order to build that platform to get people to notice your book, because there's 1,000 books published a day.
yeah,
It's easy to drown in that sea of books.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
harder just to stay floating. And that's kind of where our target right now is. It's just to stay floating. To get up there to where you're making all the lists, it's that much more work, and it involves a lot more money. And so you gotta, figure out what you're doing. Are you able to spend this money for the marketing, or are you putting more of the effort into making your book the best it can be? If you've spent all making the book the best it can be, then you have to learn grassroots marketing. And you have to learn the ways that you can get out there and reach the widest audience without having to spend the money you don't have.
and that's had always been one of my like Ed Sauter and I kind of went back and forth on that because I did marketing. I mean, but I didn't like when I was doing for web design and graphic design. I designed and I did SEO under the oh my god, what's the name of it? Like I said, getting older, I think I'm going to start forgetting stuff. But like search engine optimization, I did the ads for a lot of agricultural companies, websites, and then also going in. I wrote a manual on how to advertise back in the day when Google was coming up, and I keep telling people it's like when you're doing it, not to deter them from writing. Of course, you want to keep writing, but I always said there has to be a different way, a new paradigm somehow where it's going to switch us on how to get these books out there in a sense where, because a lot of authors don't know nothing about marketing. So what ends up happening once you get the book done, your job is completely different now. Now you have to become a marketer. And not only do you have to learn how to fix your book, now you have to learn the steps and the beginnings on how to do marketing. And a lot of authors have a regular job. And so trying to do that and keep your book professional, plus learn the marketing, and then do all these like interviews or promos or whatnot, and then figure out what goes into each single part. Like, how do I get into magazines? You have to read on how to actually do that. You have to read on how to do social media marketing and do it the correct way. And then you have to do, like, if you want to get into Amazon, you have to go. A lot of people get on Amazon and they start spending like $5 for a freaking ad. And it's like, why are you doing that? If you spend $5 and your book is $2.99, you're going to get the click, but nobody's going to buy it. But now you're spending $5.99 on the click. It's like, no, you start with like 11 cents or something and see if it's going to wake up the whole ad. And then if it wakes up, then you have more people. And so everybody kind of messes up in the beginning, but yet at the same time trying to put in, like, I did it for 6 years, and I had to keep on top of marketing when I was doing it for other businesses. And I was saying, like, I think that there was a big switch between technology and like traditional publishing compared to the new one. It was a catch-22 with the internet. Everybody's throwing out their books, but they're not really knowing how to do it the correct way.
Yeah.
And then you got an influx of things.
And it's hard to learn, especially when you just went through the learning curve of publishing, which is it is a learning curve by itself. And then now you have to switch in and become the marketing person for your book and still write more, because you can't just get away with one book.
Yeah, you got to keep on writing.
Exactly. So you feel like you're on this endless hamster wheel. But there are resources out there, and I know, was it Brian Cohen does a marketing class every couple of months on how to use Amazon appropriately. It's free, so it's worth signing up for. It's a free resource. I tell everyone about Story Origin because it's a free source to help with the grassroots marketing. Because if you don't have the money or the know-how, you don't want to go broke just trying to get your book noticed. You got to try some of the free options, learn what you can do before moving up the chain to get your book in a little bit higher level marketing, like, you know, the paid for advertising and stuff like that. Because it does become a full-time job, and you've got to start baby steps and learn it before you dive right into it and risk losing it all. Because I know I've spent way more money on advertising than I should have.
Oh yeah, no, trust me, I
Ryan's
spent
course was
thousands.
wonderful at helping outline some of the areas I was doing incorrectly.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I wanted to do. Like in 2020, that's what I did. I spent like I said, over I think $3,000 just trying out every service out there to see who's lying and who's not. I had the money. I know it's money that I could have done, but at the same time, I wanted to actually see does this stuff actually work, because I would read, I would do my research, but every research still has people who are for and against it. So it's like, man, you're really never going to know until you do it for yourself. So I did.
It's trial and error, because what works for one person in the same genre doesn't always work the same way for somebody else in the same genre. It's crazy how marketing does swing like that for authors who are like back to back, same exact type book, style book. They do something, it works for them. You do the same thing, you don't get the same results.
Yeah.
It's insane how that works. So it's really trial and error, what works for you and your readers that you're targeting.
All right. Well, we're at 5:01. I was going to say, I think we got a lot of tips from you.
I hope so.
Thank you, Katie, very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to answer any other questions. And like I said, my capacity as a publishing consultant, that's what I do. So
awesome. Definitely. Yeah, we'll probably, like I say, we're hoping to get our channel going. We're barely starting. So, you know, we have a small, I think we only have like maybe 5 subscribers right now. I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get some more. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully we'll have you back on, and we'll have even maybe 10 by that time or more, maybe 100. No. But yeah, so let us know where people can find you if they do want to seek your services.
Absolutely. So for my author side of things, look me up by name, Katie Salidas. I'm at katiesalidas.com. All of my links are directly on my homepage right out in front for email, for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram. It's all right there on the front page, including Spilling Ink. If you're interested in any kind of self-publishing services, I'm at Rising Sign Books. If you're at katiesalidas.com, you just click on the self-publishing service tab. It'll take you right there, or go to risingsignbooks.com. And you can find all the information about me, the services I provide, and how you can contact me to talk about your next book project.
All right. Awesome.
Great.
So, got any other things, Janelle, before we say goodbye?
No, other than just to thank Katie again for coming on and giving all the great tips that you did. And I do hope that we can get you back again soon.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have you guys on Spilling Ink, so we'll get to talk again really soon.
Good.
Yes, Spilling Ink, and that's 13th, March 13th, because we had to switch it. A quinceañera popped up on me, so I got to go film that one.
That's important.
So thanks everybody for tuning in again. We'll be maybe Sunday again, hopefully, if everything starts going back to normal here in Texas. And of course, on Tuesdays, we usually talk more about our books and universe, trying to keep a little bit of tips out there. If you want to go take a look at me and Janelle's books, you can go to Kindle, and we have it both on print and Kindle. So you can look us up under WJR Parks and Janelle Coberly. Also, for anybody that wants to look up Katie's books, can they find it on Kindle as well?
Yes, anywhere that you shop for ebooks or print books, you will find my books. Just look me up by name.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, guys.